Listen up, Star Warriors. I'm getting ready to drop some truth on the galaxy. I'm going to start with the Outer Rim. That is, if the Outer Rim even exists anymore. I don't even know, really. No, I mean, and I say that because I don't see how, unless there's like 5 different star systems in the galaxy these days, I don't see how the First Order can bounce back from losing Starkiller Base and 5 minutes later take over the rest of the galaxy and catch the Resistance with their pants down. But anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I came to talk about Rian Johnson again. Rian Johnson, whatever you want to call him. Why do I think that if Rian Johnson and directors that take over Star Wars movies in the future don't change their opinion about the fans now, that Lucasfilm is going to be in a world of hurt? A world of hurt. Why do I say that? Well, it's very simple. Even if they lose us and people like us, people who have been hardcore fans of Star Wars, basically for as long as we can remember, they will never be able to reestablish a fan base that is strong as the one that has, stuck with them for 30 or 40 years. I mean, I know a lot of people who grew up around a slightly different era, a little bit later on, love the prequels, and I don't blame them for that. You know, there's a lot of stuff the prequels have to offer. I like the prequels too, but the prequels just do not have the social and cinematic impact that the original trilogy had. You know, I mean, so many people who were in the theaters in the 70s and 80s watching these movies and waiting 3 years for these movies to show up, you know, in theaters again, are still around today. And even though there's a lot of people who, you know, came around for the prequels, who are still around today, the fervor for Star Wars is a lot less, and that's kind of sad because there's been a whole lot more Star Wars in between the lulls between films these days than there were when I was, you know, young. And I had to wait decades for more Star Wars. You know, I mean, in the 90s they had the Bantam Spectra novels that would come out like one every year. You know, and you'd have to wait like another year for a new novel. And we would do it. There were some comics that would keep us, you know, hold us over for a while. But now Star Wars is just everywhere. And the fervor for Star Wars is nowhere near as great as it was back in the 80s, you know. And so, why do I know that things are going to get worse for Lucasfilm if Rian Johnson and those like him do not change their course? It's very simple. Back in the 70s and the 80s, George Lucas was a struggling director. I mean, he had a great idea, he had some connections, he had some friends help him out, and he met some intelligent and really great people to work with. John Williams, for instance, Ben Burt, the sound guy, Ralph McQuarrie, the art guy. He just met a lot of right people that have almost as much to do with making the Star Wars universe what it is as George Lucas did, you know. I mean, he became the money man behind it all, but Darth Vader would not be Darth Vader if it wasn't for Ralph McQuarrie. The movies wouldn't be the movies if it wasn't for John Williams, you know. All those great sound effects, Ben Burt, you know, he's responsible for those. And so Star Wars just ushered in this renaissance of filmmaking. There was nothing around that could compete with it, that could copy it, and people tried to copy it and they failed miserably. You know, George Lucas was so under pressure to get these films done and to get them right because he wanted to continue making, or finishing his trilogy. He had to get as many people in the seats as possible, and he pretty much overcompensated. He was rushing against deadlines. He was rushing against losing or running out of money. He had a nervous breakdown in the middle of shooting A New Hope. It was just a miracle that he got it done. There was so much pressure on him, and what is always left out when people compare the different trilogies is that you can't make a diamond without pressure. You just can't do it. And I don't want to bash the prequels, but he was so rich when he was making them, there was absolutely no pressure on him. There was no pressure on him to ask his friends like Francis Ford Coppola or Steven Spielberg for their advice. He surrounded himself with yes men because he could afford to surround himself with yes men. He couldn't afford that back in the 70s and the 80s. A New Hope made a hell of a lot of money, but he used that money making The Empire Strikes Back. He used practically all of it up, so he was struggling for that as well. He was struggling less for Empire because he didn't direct Empire, but the struggle was there. He had to hire a new director, and Irvin Kershner was just freaking amazing. He was better for Star Wars than George Lucas was. Empire will forever be my favorite movie, probably. So that leads us to today. Lucasfilm is still this like mega behemoth. I love the prequels, and George Lucas, did the prequels, and he did an adequate job. He told his story, and if you look at the synopsis and the subtext of what's in the story and what he was trying to say with it, it's good stuff. The Fall of the Republic, the Fall of the Jedi, the Rise of the Empire, those are great ideas, and I like most of the actors. I have a soft spot for Hayden Christensen. I like Natalie Portman as well, although I feel that neither of them were perfectly suited for their role as, say, Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, and Carrie Fisher were for theirs. But that's besides the point. I didn't hate those movies, I liked them. But still, the reason why I don't think those movies are diamonds is because there was just no urgency for them to be. Lucas at that point had stopped caring what the F fans wanted, because he had already gotten his billions out of the fans over the 30 years before he started making, or I should say 20 years before he started making the prequels. And few people ever bring this out, but it's the honest to God truth. He didn't have to make them as good as the original trilogy. The funny thing is he used so much money. He gained it back, of course, but he used so much money defacing the original trilogy as he was making the prequels. That's how much money he had. He had money to throw at just ruining his original movies, because I think he was angry that people liked them better. Better than the ones he was working on at the time. So anyway, that's enough about the prequels. I love the prequels, and I don't want to, give anyone the idea that I don't. But that leads us to today, and what's going to be happening into the future. Today, Rian Johnson, and I know it's not like 100% confirmed, absolutely positively going to happen that he's going to get his trilogy, but I'm just going to go off of what the statements they've made. I'm going to assume that he is going to get his own trilogy to make, and if he doesn't, that's great. If he does, then if he doesn't change his perspective on the hardcore Star Wars fans that have been there for Star Wars for 30, 40 years, whatever it's been, I think Lucasfilm is going to be in trouble into the future. And the reason why is because as time has gone by and Lucasfilm has become this mega powerful, rich, but stagnant beast, the urgency to make the best films they can make isn't there. I don't care what Rian Johnson has to say about how he made the best movie he possibly could. Take all of his money away, you know, give him a limited amount of resources and say, make this movie or you don't get to eat, and I guarantee you he will make a better movie or he won't eat. You know, you put him in the situation that George Lucas was in, and that guy will make a movie that people will love. And I will stand by that. I will argue with that, because as a famous actor said in the once famous movie, life finds a way. He will find a freaking way to eat. You know. Or he will quit and they will get someone else to make the movie. That's something that these movies will never get again if they don't change their perspective on pleasing the people that are always going to be there. Right now they're making fans for the general audience. And the general audience is going to go to your movies. There will be a lot of them. They'll have a good time when they're there. And 2 weeks after they've seen them, they will forget about it, because there's going to be another movie on the horizon they're looking forward to. The fact of the matter is, they're not making diamonds with Star Wars these days. They're not making diamond characters. They're not making diamond story plots. They're making great special effects, I will say that. There's great set design. There's great costume design. There's great music, kind of. You know, it's nothing like the original trilogy, but there's still good music in Star Wars. They're doing great things, but it's all of the other stuff. It's not none of the stuff that they're doing great is at the heart of Star Wars. At the heart of Star Wars has always been, or Star Wars has been famous for, epic, great stories. You know, it's just, they're famous for that, and they're famous for that because their stories aren't like every other story. I watched The Last Jedi and I was thinking, you know, this isn't too different from Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, it's definitely not different from the plot of The Empire Strikes Back. And why would I want to see The Empire Strikes Back plot in a movie that isn't The Empire Strikes Back? I mean, do you see the trouble here? Eventually, if they keep along this course, they're going to get diminishing returns. You know, people are going to be like, ho hum, another Star Wars film. Will I go to see this one? You know, I mean, when is Solo coming out? It's not going to be very long from now. So I had a feeling that when they said they were going to be doing Star Wars films every year, that people would eventually get tired of Star Wars films, but I have a feeling now that people are going to get tired of Star Wars films a whole lot sooner than I originally thought. But yeah, they need to focus on making diamonds, because the casual audience isn't there for Star Wars. The casual audience is there because they're hungry for films. And Star Wars is just going to be one film out a year out of dozens, you know, maybe hundreds that they're interested in seeing. There's not going to be anything special about it. The characters are going to be dull. And sure, if they're able to make several movies a year for the next 100 years, then eventually they will make, you know, some movies that can stand up to the original trilogy. But they'll be few and far between, and all of those characters in those movies will outshine characters like Rey, Kylo Ren, Finn, Snoke, you know, and people will understand why people like us were ranting and raving about The Last Jedi and movies like it. Anyway, guys, leave your comments down below. I'd like to hear from you. Get your opinions. Tell me what you think. May the Force be with you.